I was hauling a load late one night, the kind of drive that stretches a man thin over hours of dark highway and broken radio signals. The road seemed endless, disappearing into the shadows like it had no beginning or end. My rig's headlights carved a narrow tunnel of light through the black, and the only other illumination came from the occasional blinking exit sign, far off in the distance. I'd been on the road all day, tired but used to the rhythm of night driving. There's a strange comfort in it, the solitude, the constant hum of the diesel engine. But that night I could feel something pressing at the edges of it, something I couldn't put my finger on. Eventually, I decided to pull into a rest area I'd stopped at dozens of times before. The sign said it was open 24 hours, but as I slowed, I noticed the lights were dimmer than usual. They flickered intermittently, casting long, wavering shadows across the cracked pavement. My first thought was that it was just a bad bulb or a short in the wiring, but the hum coming from the vending machines was different this time. It wasn't mechanical. It was like the machines were warning me, their low buzz throbbing through the concrete under my boots. I told myself it was nothing, just exhaustion and overactive imagination, and climbed down from the cab. The air smelled colder than it should have, sharp and metallic, and I pulled my jacket tighter around me. I moved toward the tiny restroom building, the kind with cracked windows and a faint smell of mildew. The fluorescent lights inside flickered like the ones outside, leaving half the room in shadows. I stepped in front of the mirror and froze. My reflection wasn't right. It moved a fraction of a second behind me, delayed just enough to make my stomach twist. I lifted a hand, and the reflection lingered behind, mimicking me sluggishly. My pulse spiked, and I shook my head, laughing nervously. "You're just tired," I whispered, but the sound of my own voice felt distant, echoing back at me in a way that didn't make sense. I tried to splash water on my face, hoping it would shake me out of whatever fog I was in, but the faucet sputtered and hissed before spraying unevenly. My hands came away wet, trembling, and I noticed the sink drain had a faint trail of something dark like old rust, but it didn't move as water should. It was almost as if it had pooled, waiting for something. The thought made my stomach turn. I dried my hands and left the building, forcing myself to focus on the road ahead. I climbed back into the cab, starting the engine, the sound familiar and grounding, but even the seat felt different somehow, narrower and colder than memory insisted it should be. The night swallowed me back up as I merged onto the highway. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but soon I noticed the mile markers were repeating. At first, I thought I'd misread them, but then each exit sign was identical to the one I'd just passed. The landscape looked the same, too, the trees, the faint glow of distant lights, the stretch of asphalt, but nothing felt right. It was like the road had folded over itself, looping me in a place that existed outside time. I reached for the radio to call dispatch, needing someone, anyone, to confirm I wasn't losing it. Static greeted me, thick and buzzing, swallowing my words. I tried again, louder this time, but it only hissed back. Then, headlights appeared behind me. They were bright, too bright, cutting through the darkness like someone had placed a second sun on the horizon. My heart thumped in a rhythm that didn't match my breathing. I checked the mirror, but there was no vehicle there. Just the lights, steady, following me as though the road itself had conjured them. I sped up, thinking maybe it was some late-night idiot playing a joke, but the lights didn't waver. They matched my every movement, refusing to be left behind. I took the next exit, though by now all exits looked the same, and even that didn't shake them. Time stretched in a way I hadn't known was possible. Minutes dragged into hours, and the sky didn't change. There was no hint of dawn or moonlight, only the cold, indifferent glow of my own headlights. The landscape stayed unervingly familiar. Trees with their skeletal branches leaned toward me as I drove, shadows dancing across the hood like they were alive. I started muttering to myself, telling myself it was just fatigue, just hallucination, but even saying it aloud didn't calm the knot in my stomach. Eventually, I passed the rest area again. It looked exactly as I remembered. Same flickering lights, same humming vending machines, but now it was completely empty. No cars, no people, not even the faint scuff of boots on concrete. It was impossible. How could I have looped back so quickly? I felt watched, certain of it, though there was no one around. I glanced at the mirrors and caught a flicker of movement. something just beyond the reach of my headlights, gone before I could focus. I slammed my hand on the horn, my voice catching in my throat, calling out into the night. Silence answered me. I climbed back into the cab and tried the radio again. The static was thicker now, almost rhythmic like breathing. I was alone on a highway that didn't exist, being followed by something that had no form, only presence. My eyes burned from staring at the dark stretch of road, and I started noticing subtle changes. A tree branch slightly closer, the guardrail warped in ways it shouldn't be, the exit signs tilting at angles that seemed unnatural. The road was alive in a way I couldn't comprehend, shifting just beyond my vision, bending and twisting. Hours, or maybe minutes later, I saw another set of lights. This time they were farther off, just ahead of me, stationary. I slowed, unsure, and as I drew closer, I realized they were the lights of a truck at the rest stop, waiting for me. But something about it was wrong. There was no movement inside, no tailpipe glow, no sound of a running engine. Just those lights, bright, unblinking, unyielding. A part of me screamed to drive past, to ignore it, but my hands were frozen on the wheel. I blinked, and when my eyes opened, it was gone. I finally forced myself to drive, my heart hammering with every repetition of the mile markers, every shadow that stretched across the road. Eventually, signs of civilization appeared, a diner, a gas station, the faint glow of a town in the distance. I pulled off, shaking, telling myself it was over. But the feeling never left. Even now, months later, I check my mirrors constantly. Every night drive, every rest stop, every stretch of endless highway makes me wonder if it's waiting again, testing me, folding the road in ways only it understands. I don't talk about it much. I don't tell friends or family because they'd think I'm losing it. But some nights, when the highway stretches into black and quiet, I swear I can hear the faint hum of the vending machines, calling, warning, waiting. And I know that no matter how far I drive, that rest stop is still out there somewhere, flickering, and I am still on the road that has no end. I was driving late that night, the kind of stretch where the highway seems endless and the darkness presses close, heavy and almost physical. I'd been hauling a load across state lines, the roads quiet and the world outside my headlights a blur of black trees and asphalt. The overpass came up suddenly, a skeletal bridge spanning the highway, old concrete cracked and slick from earlier rain. At first glance, it looked ordinary, like countless others I'd crossed before, but there was a shift in the air, a kind of pressure that made my skin crawl. I slowed as I neared it, my headlights catching movement under the guardrails. I assumed it was raccoons or some other nocturnal animal, but the shapes didn't scamper. They moved with purpose, deliberate, like they were watching, waiting. The CB radio crackled suddenly, static slicing through the quiet hum of my engine. At first, I ignored it, assuming a bad connection, but then the static resolved into faint voices whispering my name. Just my name, clear and low, almost intimate, echoing in the cab. I slammed the brakes instinctively, my tires screeching against the asphalt. The whispering didn't stop, it amplified, ricocheting off the concrete underside of the overpass. It wrapped around me, inside me, filling the cab with cold dread. My heart pounded, and my hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles were white. I couldn't look away, couldn't rationalize it. Something made me step out. The night air hit me like ice, thick and unnatural, crawling down my neck and into my chest. The shadows beneath the overpass seemed to pulse, stretching toward me. Then they rose, faint at first, blurred and half-seen, but unmistakably human. Figures, standing perfectly still, as though the world itself had paused for them. Their eyes, or the closest things I could identify as eyes, fixed on me, drilling through the metal of my truck, my very thoughts. I felt their attention on me, patient and cold, as if they'd been waiting a long time for someone like me to pass this way. Panic surged, and I stumbled back to the cab. I slammed the door shut, fumbling with the keys, but the voices followed me inside, soft, persistent, mocking. The GPS flickered violently, showing roads that didn't exist, lines splitting off into impossible angles, exits over rivers that weren't there. I hit the gas, trying to drive past, but the overpass stretched on unnaturally long, as if the night itself had expanded to trap me. Every attempt to escape was met with more whispers, more movement in the shadows that taunted me from the edges of the headlights. Minutes or hours passed. I couldn't tell. The world outside the cab no longer obeyed normal rules. Trees leaned at impossible angles. Guardrails curved where they should have been straight. Signs repeated themselves, twisted backward, and the hum of the engine became a low, echoing groan. I considered pulling over, leaving the truck and running, but my legs refused to move. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet something about the overpass held me, pressing me forward. The figures below didn't move, yet I could feel them shift, subtly, always just at the periphery of my vision. Sometimes, when I glanced quickly, I thought I saw them closer than before, then farther away, then gone entirely. It was disorienting, maddening, the kind of slow, creeping terror that gets inside your chest and doesn't let go. My eyes ached from trying to see through the dark, trying to understand what was happening. I tried calling dispatch on the CB again, my voice trembling, but the static swallowed everything. It wasn't interference, it was deliberate, heavy, suffocating. Eventually, I reached the far side of the overpass. The shadows dissipated, the whispers faded, and the GPS returned to something resembling normal. But nothing felt right. I was still on the highway, yes, but it wasn't the highway I remembered. The trees, the curves, even the way the asphalt bent under the headlights, everything was slightly off. I drove faster, trying to outrun the memory of the shadows, the cold, the gaze that had pierced me under the bridge. My mind replayed it over and over, the whispers echoing long after the sounds themselves had gone. By the time I reached a small town, the first hint of dawn brushing the sky, I was shaking. I parked at a diner, trying to calm my breathing, but the sense of being watched never left. I scanned the streets, the sidewalks, the empty lots, but there was nothing. The overpass had vanished from my mind in fragments. I could remember the shapes, the voices, the chill, but I could never pin down the exact curve of the concrete or the number of shadows. It was as if the memory had been reshaped in the night, leaving only a residue of fear. Sleep was impossible that day. I kept checking my mirrors, scanning every road, imagining the whispers creeping back along the asphalt. Even now, months later, I avoid that stretch of highway, though I know I can't. Driving through the region, I feel the shift in the air as soon as the overpass appears. It doesn't take anything overt to remind me. The cold press of air, the sensation of being observed, the faint, almost inaudible static in the back of my mind. I've talked about it to a few other truckers, cautiously, and the ones who know the stretch warn me, but their warnings are vague, almost ritualistic, like passing down a secret better left unspoken. Some mention the shadows, some the voices, some say it's nothing more than old bridges and nerves frayed by isolation. I don't argue with them because I know what I saw, what I felt. It's real. Too real. Even now, when I'm behind the wheel alone at night, every overpass, every shadow, every flicker of movement along the guardrails sets my heart racing. I never hear whispers the same way again, but sometimes in the quiet hum of the highway, I swear I can feel their eyes. Patient, cold, waiting for the next driver to wander too far into the dark. And I know, deep down, that the overpass will always be there, somewhere, holding its secrets, and the night will always stretch longer than it should, just beyond the reach of my headlights. I was driving alone that night, a long stretch of highway cutting through dense forest with no other vehicles in sight. The kind of road where headlights disappear into blackness, where the hum of the engine and the tires against asphalt are the only sounds for miles. I had been on the road for hours, hauling a shipment through winding back roads that twist through the mountains. The trees pressed close on either side, dark and unyielding, and the night was quiet in a way that should have been peaceful, but instead felt suffocating. I was used to solitude, the endless dark, but this night carried something different. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, as a faint glimmer in the rearview mirror. At first, I assumed it was another vehicle, a truck or car running late like me. But the light stayed far behind, unnaturally steady, never flickering, never fading, as if anchored to the road itself. I slowed slightly, letting it pass, but it mirrored my every move with a precision that made my stomach knot. I sped up, desperate to leave it behind, yet the light remained, perfectly aligned with my rig, refusing to yield. My pulse quickened, and I could feel my hands trembling on the wheel. There was nothing to see beyond the light. No shape, no form, no exhaust. just an unblinking pair of headlights keeping pace with me. I tried calling dispatch on the CB radio, hoping a familiar voice would cut through the growing tension. At first, all I got was static, thick and unrelenting, buzzing in my ears. Then, faintly, a voice began repeating every route I had taken that day, every turn, every mile in my own cadence. I froze, my mind trying to rationalize it. Some prank, a glitch, a coincidence. But there was no one else on the highway, and the voice didn't belong to anyone I knew. It wasn't mocking me, not exactly, but it carried intent, familiarity, a deep knowledge that chilled me to the bone. I changed lanes, weaving from the right to the left, trying to break the pattern to escape whatever was following. It followed. I slowed, hoping it would pass, and it slowed. I tried sudden bursts of speed, my tires whining in protest, but the headlights stayed fixed behind me, exact and unyielding. I could feel my chest tightening with fear, each heartbeat echoing in my ears. The forest seemed to lean closer as I drove, the shadows stretching toward me, and every reflective surface, the mirrors, the chrome of the truck, even puddles along the roadside, showed nothing except that unwavering light. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost its meaning in the dark, a blur of asphalt and trees and the relentless gaze of those lights. My eyes burned from staring into the rearview, trying to comprehend the impossible. The CB radio hissed and crackled again, whispers filling the cab, recounting every stop, every signal, every minor maneuver I'd made that day. It wasn't human, not really, but the pattern was precise, almost intelligent. I clenched the wheel so tight my knuckles whitened, and I whispered prayers under my breath, though I didn't know to whom or what. At one point, I swerved to a small pull-off, thinking I could hide, maybe confuse it. I killed the engine, my heart hammering, and the headlights stopped at the edge of the forest, just beyond the asphalt. I could feel them there, patient and unblinking, like a predator studying its prey. I sat in the cab, barely breathing, counting seconds that stretched into an eternity. Then, without warning, I forced the engine back to life, rolled back onto the road, and the lights followed again, seamlessly, as if my pause had never happened. The world outside twisted subtly. The lines on the highway seemed to curve in impossible ways, shadows creeping where no trees existed. Occasionally, I'd catch glimpses of shapes, movement at the edge of vision, but every time I looked directly, nothing was there. My brain screamed for reason, for explanation, but the fear was too strong, too visceral. Sleep became a distant memory weeks ago. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see those lights, fixed and patient, and I woke sweating, heart pounding. By the time I finally reached a small town, I felt like I'd been driving for days in a place that didn't follow the rules of the real world. As I entered the first strip of streetlights, the lights behind me vanished. Just like that, gone, leaving me with nothing but the memory of their presence, a weight in my chest that wouldn't lift. I stopped at a diner, shaking, clutching a coffee cup I couldn't taste, staring out the window into the night that had followed me. The memory of the unblinking headlights remained, etched into my mind, an unrelenting gaze that refused to release me. Even now, months later, I avoid that stretch whenever possible, but I know it will be there. Any long, dark stretch of highway could host it. Any night alone, the quiet punctuated only by the hum of tires and engine, could bring back that steady, deliberate pair of lights. They weren't a vehicle in any way I understand. They were something else, something with purpose, waiting for the exact moment to appear and keep watch. I check my mirrors constantly, more than I should, and sometimes, in the corner of my vision, I think I see a faint glimmer of that light, always patient, always silent, always unblinking. The memory haunts me, the endless road, the dense forest pressing in on either side, and the certainty that something beyond comprehension had been following, waiting, studying. I don't speak of it to many people. It's not something you can explain without sounding insane. But every time I drive alone, every time I haul a load through the mountains or across empty highways, I feel the gaze return, steady and deliberate. And I know, deep down, that the next time I see those lights, I won't be able to escape them so easily. The highway stretches forever, the forest waits patiently, and the unblinking headlights will always be there, somewhere just behind me, carrying the memory of that night into every mile I drive after.